This pie chart shows the reality of the modern American apparel market. Despite sweeping new tariffs in 2025, aimed at bringing manufacturing back home, only 3% of the clothing sold in the United States is actually made here. The domestic textile and apparel sector once employed over 1.5 million Americans. Today, that number has collapsed by 80%, leaving fewer than 271,000 workers on the factory floor. Politicians and economists constantly debate how to rebuild this manufacturing base. But to understand what it actually means to reshore this industry, we have to look closely at the deafening, lint-choked reality of how it operated at its peak in the early 1900s. The wealth of the modern industrial world was spun out of 6-story brick fortresses that generated massive profits for their owners, while systematically destroying the lungs and bodies of the people trapped inside. The process starts in the opening room. Workers here cut open highly compressed 500-pound bales of raw cotton and feed them into high-speed beaters that rip the fibers apart. The air in this room is a dense, visible fog of dust, broken leaves, and field debris. This diagram reveals what was actually in that fog. The dried leaf cupping the cotton boll, known as the bract, contains high concentrations of bacteria-derived endotoxins. As machines shred the bract into microscopic particles, workers inhale these bacterial compounds deep into their lungs. No workers experienced a predictable cycle. They simply call it Monday fever. After resting on Sunday, they would return to the factory on Monday morning and rapidly develop severe chest tightness, shortness of breath, and a raspy cough as their immune systems reacted to the toxins. Over years of 11-hour shifts, the disease, medically known as byssinosis, or brown lung, progressed. What started as temporary Monday chest tightness evolved into persistent, irreversible, obstructive lung disease, eventually destroying the worker's ability to breathe and leading to premature death. Mill owners told their workforce that this coughing was simply a sign they were getting used to the dust again. Installing proper ventilation technology would have cut into low profit margins, so the hazard remained untouched for decades. The cleaned cotton moves next to the carding and spinning rooms. Here, massive cylinders covered in fine wire teeth align the fibers, while thousands of rapidly rotating spindles draw them out and twist them into strong, even thread. In southern mill villages, the company owned the factory, the local store, and the workers' houses. Managers frequently required families to supply one worker for every room in their company-owned house. To keep a 4-room home, families had no choice but to send children as young as 10 onto the factory floor. Southern industrialists explicitly used this cheap, unregulated youth labor as a cost advantage over northern mills, which operated under much stricter state-mandated age and hour laws. The reality of these conditions only entered public consciousness through documentary photography. Louis Hine captured images of young girls tending massive spinning frames, and 10-year-old boys working 12-hour shifts, providing undeniable proof of the human cost. Employing children to piece together broken threads was a fiercely defended pillar of the American industrial business model, justified by owners as a strict economic necessity. Before weaving can begin, the finished yarn requires preparation. The most labor-intensive step is drawing in, an agonizingly slow manual process requiring a worker to thread individual warp strands, the lengthwise threads of a fabric, through the loom's wire loops. This visualization shows the math involved. To set up a single standard loom, a worker had to use a small hand hook to pull over 3,200 individual threads in a precise, exact order. Once threaded, the spools moved to the weave room. These were cathedral-scale halls, typically spanning an entire floor of a multi-story building, designed specifically to house over 500 power looms running simultaneously. Every fraction of a second, heavy metal components slammed together to beat the horizontal thread into the fabric. Multiplied by 500 machines, the room generated a sustained 115 decibels of noise. That is the acoustic equivalent of standing next to a running chainsaw for 11 hours a day, causing permanent hearing loss and forcing workers to communicate entirely through lip reading. The weave room represented the ultimate contradiction of the era, engineering achieving unparalleled mechanical output, housed in an environment completely hostile to human survival. The economics of American cotton shifted abruptly in the late 1880s, thanks to an invention conceptualized in a Massachusetts chicken co-op by a mechanic named James Henry Northrop. He developed an automatic loom. When the shuttle's bobbin of yarn ran out, the machine automatically ejected the empty piece and loaded a fresh full bobbin from a rotating magazine in a fraction of a second without the loom ever stopping. With the machine handling the reloads, a single weaver could now tend 16 or more looms instead of the previous limit of 8. Almost overnight, the labor cost per yard of cloth dropped by half. This created a productivity paradox. As American cloth output climbed to historic highs, the number of human hands required to make it plummeted. Automation cannibalized the domestic workforce to maximize profits, decades before foreign trade entered the equation. That automation was the second of 5 distinct forces that systematically dismantled the industry. First came the internal migration of mills from New England to the cheaper, less regulated South. Then the automatic loom, followed by the invention of synthetic fibers like polyester. Finally, trade liberalization dealt the fatal blows, the North American Free Trade Agreement in 1994, and China's admission to the World Trade Organization in 2001. Today, industry executives face a structural impossibility. Even with massive tariffs on imports, reshoring is largely impractical because the highly specialized human skills, the equipment suppliers, and the local processing chains have all been permanently wiped out. The jobs evaporated, but the massive brick complexes built to last centuries remained. Today, the deadly deafening weave rooms of places like Lowell's Brood cotton mills operate as museums, startup offices, and highly sought-after luxury lofts. Modern trade policy can redirect global supply chains to new countries, but bringing back the 1900s American cotton mill is impossible because the brutal, labor-intensive realities that built that industry are conditions we would never accept today.